to Truth of Universe, where we explore the Madagascar, an island off the African coast. It is among the world's most biologically varied locations. Its fauna and plants are almost entirely unique to this part of the planet. And we noticed a spot when we observed it from orbit. A gigantic dark circle that is over 13 kilometers in circumference, nearly perfectly round, and large enough to cause traffic to be diverted on both sides. From a side view, we could tell that it was a mountain. And if you looked very close, you could see a settlement tucked away in the middle of the crater. 8 kilometers away from the nearest town on Google Maps with a label. Solitary in a secluded area in a secluded nation that is geographically remote. It appeared as though it had existed for many generations. However, if you were to look back in time, it would get smaller and smaller with each passing year. And nobody was there at all prior to 2008. One question I wanted to try to address was, why did these people relocate to such a remote area? Here, I was essentially starting from scratch. There was no one in Madagascar that I knew. My knowledge about Madagascar was limited. However, the question remained, could we communicate with the locals using only the internet? The locations with the closest location tags were a playground, a historical landmark, and a butcher store on the mountain's margins. However, none of them seemed genuine. Instead, they were all only sporadic allusions to the widely read Russian manga and anime series Attack on Titan from Japan. The ones that appeared authentic, such as schools, hospitals, and churches, were not very visible online. We therefore examined material that had been geotagged in the area. Using the village's coordinates and a search radius, start with Twitter. Until, at last, we located someone 12 kilometers away. A charitable employee who, in 2014, had posted from a nearby village. We inquired as to whether he was aware of the mountaintop village. However, he never responded to us. We searched Instagram for photos that have the closest town tagged on them. Antanaditra and discovered a relief group that had uploaded photos of themselves there. We inquired, but they were unsure. They had never set foot on the mountain in reality. Finally, we examined YouTube geotags. A video was also present. Adjacent to the settlement atop the mountain, the location is geotagged. However, after that, it was merely additional material from Attack on Titan. Written in Russian as well. It seemed after a while that there wasn't going to be much information on the internet by itself. Thus, we began contacting specialists who had experience working in Madagascar. Specialists in agriculture. And biogeographic specialists. With a population of about 29 million, Madagascar is slightly larger than Australia and slightly smaller than Texas. More than 60% of the people in the nation reside in rural areas similar to this one. However, this village was really far away. When you pan out, Tsiroeno is the nearest large city. 18 kilometers distant, home to more than 44,000 people. It felt like we might have to go in a more direct route at this point in the process. Perhaps we could employ someone to go to the village by way of the mountainside. A person in Madagascar. It was how we got to know Layli. Hello, Christopher. In Antananarivo, the capital of Madagascar, Layli owns and operates a production company. She was willing to travel. She began organizing a team, establishing contacts with locals, and figuring out how to go from Antananarivo all the way to this location. Their specific plan for reaching the village was still unknown to them. Or how, once arriving, they would make contact. However, they were aware that, in the midst of Madagascar's scorching wet season, they would only have a few days to complete the task. And they left early on a January morning. It's Ticina here. She will serve as our guide. This man is a historian named Haja. This is our fixer, Vahambala. Joss is our extremely attentive driver. And you already know who I am, this is me. Every step of the way, Layli texted us as they got closer to the summit. Up until, at last, they reached the summit of the mountain after covering 10 kilometers on foot and by motorcycle. However, as they arrived and prepared to descend to the crater settlement, a huge storm front emerged. And they were forced to retreat. They were very, very close. However, communication with the tribe would have to wait until the rainy season ended. This occurred in May. 4 months from now. Even still, the amount of study we had already done gave us a clear picture of this location's appearance. What Layli's team did see looked green, lush, and clearly extremely difficult to access. But there was so much we didn't know. Before Layli went in January, she wasn't convinced that anybody lived there at all. There's the small group of houses at the very top in the very middle that we've kinda been interested in. So I turned to some very basic Googling. And I found an article about earthquakes in Madagascar. The article described how a team of researchers mapped Madagascar via seismic tomography. That's tomography, not topography, because it's mapping the Earth's interior, not exterior, like a CT scan for the planet. This final map of the entire island was created using all of these measurements. Using colors to identify the various rock types and eras. And I saw one perfectly round dot right here in the middle of the map. I imported it into Photoshop and placed the map on top of it. And it was precisely in line with the mountain. That indicated that the mountain was from the Cretaceous period, which is estimated to have occurred between 66 to 145 million years ago based on the key. Furthermore, it was eruptive. This appeared to be an extremely extinct volcano. However, we were curious to be sure. I thus set out to find a Madagascar-based volcano specialist who could enlighten me. Consequently, I came across Salavo Raharimahifa. He gave me a map that came from a thorough geological study of the region. Aged 90 million years. Older than the Everest summit. The Canyon Grande. Pompeius. This was a really old item. This means that it had been extinct for a very, very long time, 90 million years. But there was another reason that made that number noteworthy. Alright. Salavo is speaking of this same instant. When Madagascar and India split away. Given the age of these rocks, 90 million years, it seems plausible that the volcano played a role in the enormous continent-to-continent split. In order to find experts who were more knowledgeable about the division of Madagascar and India, we set out. And Joe Meert was located. A professor of geology who has written extensively regarding the genesis and movement of continents. Since this was a rather quick introduction to volcanic geology, I asked Matt, our motion designer, to help me make it a little bit more readable. Known as plumes, Madagascar and India are situated beneath this extremely deep mantle source. That plume creates a hot zone as it reaches the planet's crust. Madagascar burned a hole through the island and created all of the volcanoes as it passed over the hotspot. Eventually, the hotspot was shut off from those volcanoes as Madagascar's continental plate continued to migrate. If there is no heat source, after cooling, they fell apart. The plumbing system that existed beneath that volcano is all that's left. Thus, that is what we were observing, the crumbling remains of a volcano that was created by a hotspot that had split Madagascar and India apart. I had no notion at this time how any of this was related to the village we were able to see on Google Earth. However, we had just received a response from another expert on Madagascar by email. He forwarded us the URL mindat.org, which functions similarly to Wikipedia for minerals and mining. And a page on the peak was included. Including its name, the Ambohiby Massif. Finally. We knew the name of this mountain that had been unlabeled on every other map we'd seen so far. And we could search for it. We found maps from 1899, 1903, and 1916, where the Ambohiby was always labeled as a lush forest, the only one for almost 100 kilometers. That definitely didn't seem to be the case anymore. But maybe these old trees were a clue. We kept looking. And we found old reports. One from 1933 said that at the highest part of the massif there is a very open valley, called by the indigenous Andrinomangatsiaka, or where we find fresh water. Water. The locals may have moved there for that reason. Because of the mountain's higher elevation, it received more moisture, which nourished the streams that ran down the mountain in all directions, and transforming the center into the ideal setting for a village to flourish. Next, we looked for reports that could be a little bit older. Additionally, we discovered a 2012 study concerning the Ambohiby's roots on Google Scholar. Everything from plate tectonics to the geochemistry to tiny photos of its rocks was addressed. It also contained rock samples that were obtained just adjacent to the crater town. A geoscientist from South Africa by the name of Ndivhuwo Cecilia Mukosi wrote the study. Additionally, she had to have been in communication with the locals if she had taken rock samples from this location when the village already had this appearance. Mukosi spent the next few days conducting fieldwork. So we read through her paper more thoroughly in the interim. It also revealed to us the true nature of the formation. A complex of alkaline rings. Alkaline describes the magma's chemical makeup. This type of molten rock is produced when continents split apart, as occurred 90 million years ago with Madagascar and India. I looked at hundreds more around the globe using this new phrase. In the United States, Sudan, Egypt, Niger, Namibia, and Zimbabwe. They were in every place. A circle covering the entire world. Relics of volcanoes that are long gone. I wanted to speak with someone who could explain to me the rationale behind the desire of a community to reside above an alkaline ring complex. I then set out to locate the most well-known researcher associated with the most well-known alkaline ring complex worldwide. That's when I noticed this. The Rikhat organization. Alternatively known as the Sahara Eye. Conspiracies abound around an alkaline ring complex in Mauritania. Even on Google Maps, where a ton of comments claim it to be the location of Atlantis. Nobody knows what it is another fact. However, Michel J. Brack, a geologist, is aware of what it is. He's done an enormous amount of research on that topic and even contributed to getting an illustration on Mauritania's money. Earth. Perhaps that's why they relocated here. A valley with exceptionally productive soil was left behind by the formation of this alkaline ring complex during the breakup of continents. The geoscientist who had investigated the Ambohiby complex, Ndivhuwo Cecilia Mukosi, was the last person who might have knowledge about the community living there. We chatted once she returned from her field research. The fact that there appears to be a farm in the center of the crater of the ring complex is one of the features about this site that initially truly drew our attention. Do you know what I mean? All along, I had overlooked this. In 2012, Mukosi's study was published. However, she had actually been to the Ambohiby in 2007, which was 5 years earlier. Before anyone had initially relocated here. That concluded things. We had been attempting to locate information about an extremely isolated village in an extremely remote region of the nation. Furthermore, the individual who had conducted the most recent formal analysis of it did so prior to the village's foundation. We had conducted so much research. We couldn't figure it out. However, the wet season had ended. And now at last we could send Layli and her crew back to complete the journey. Hello Christopher, we're on our way out. Therefore, Tsiro is our destination. We are now en route. Layli brought in a completely new crew, which included the filmmaker Rado Andrea Manisa, who shot scenes while driving through the rural areas of Madagascar. Of rice farmers, basket weavers, and pineapple vendors. We are roughly 1 hour and 45 minutes away from Tsiro. The largest city nearest to the Ambohiby. Once they arrived, they picked up Johari, the last member of the crew. A local from Tsiro who would serve as their guide. Hi there. Hi there. Do you hear me right now? He told me he had made numerous ascents of the Ambohiby. He even focused on its water resources for his master's thesis. But had never visited the village in the middle of it. Antanaditra. Merely 8 kilometers distant. They might then set out to conduct interviews with locals residing on the periphery of the massif. the nearest neighbors of the crater village. What do they think makes this place special? The crew asked them. The residents closest to the crater settlement were the ones they had met. However, it would require an entire day to ascend the peak to its summit. They left early the following morning in an attempt to make it to the village one last time. What you perceive beyond me, that line, that is the crater. It appears to be in a remote location. It's a breathtaking place. Still, though. Till last. They showed up. Thus, the crater is getting closer to us. And they got a close-up look at the village. Full with people, animals, and dozens of houses. But tensions increased as soon as they got near. There are those in the community who believe we are a group of spies who are here to frame them. We have to wait for now. One of the town's officials showed up to speak after 2.5 hours. We were able to locate our facilitator at last. More precisely, they left the central highlands of Madagascar and moved from Manandriana, a district in the Ambohiby Massif region. A trip spanning more than 380 kilometers. The inhabitants of Ambohiby, like most of Ambohiby Massif, are Betsileo. Of the 18 major ethnic groupings of Madagascar, the third largest. This means that they became an ethnic minority in addition to moving to a new place of residence. Presently residing in an area where Merina people predominate. The reason behind their selection of this isolated location remained a mystery. Up until they sat down to speak with an elder in the village named Razafanashala. They also gave it a moniker. Ambohiby Anosibe. Ambohiby Anosibe. Big Island Ambohiby, also known as Anosibe Ambohiby. We now knew why they chose to live here. And the reason they had come so far to reside in such a place. Both the soil and the water benefited from it. It was, however, primarily for space. And it's understandable why. The population density of Tsiro as a whole is just over 49 persons per square kilometer. However, that density is more than twice as high in Manandriana, the original home of the migrants. And land is crucial for farmers like them. They need it for planting, raising cattle, and starting a family. Layli and the team were then taken by the villagers to see what they had done with all of that area. A vast field full of hundreds of orange and lemon trees. Madagascar has 5 kilometers of roads for every 100 square kilometers of land, making it one of the least developed road networks in the world. Most people in Madagascar reside in rural regions similar to this one. However, only a small portion of those living in rural areas are within 2 kilometers of a year-round road. It implies that roughly 16 million people lead fundamentally disconnected lives. Better, more linked roadways make it simpler to go to marketplaces, hospitals, and educational institutions. A simpler process for creating a better existence. Hello, Christopher, how are things going for you? Finally, we've visited the crater. They reside in an extremely distant location. Since this is comparable to the crater's core. It's incredible how they managed to survive while living in the heart of a crater. However, getting there is not an easy life. I kept staring at this exact match to the first picture we saw of the community when I was watching through all the video that Layli's team sent us after they arrived home. And it dawned on me. There are very few images of Anosibe Ambohiby on the internet, except from a few captured by cameras placed hundreds of kilometers above the earth. Up till this moment. We can view almost any area in the world thanks to the internet. We may find places that are fictitious. Or possibly surrounded more by rumors than reality. And some are completely unknown to us unless we go there, make inquiries, and listen to the locals as they share their stories. Stay tuned to Truth of Universe for more stories of discovery and exploration. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos.